Whiskey Neat is brought to you in part by Glenfiddich and William Grant & Sons. Today, Glenfiddich, the world's most awarded single malt Scotch whiskey, challenges conventions once again as it reimagines celebrations across the world with Grand Cru. An exclusive expression that's been matured for 23 years and elegantly finished in rare French cuvee oak casks, it fuses together the finest flavors from Scotland and France to create a true taste of luxury to be enjoyed with others. Pick up a bottle of Glenfiddich's award-winning single malt line today, almost anywhere.
Welcome to this week's episode of Whiskey Neat, spirited conversations with interesting people. I am your host, Christopher Hart. Now, I know what you're thinking. This is episode 100. That must be a really special episode, and I came to tell you, it's not. The 100 episodes in a 52-week year means that we're essentially celebrating 1 year, 10 months and 28 days into something like that, into our show. And I don't think that necessarily qualifies as being super special, so I'm going to wait for the 2-year mark to really try to blow it up. I go into and explain a little bit about that in this episode, as well as this episode's really a breakdown of everything that happened around last week's episode. I'm sure we're going to have tons of residual listeners from last week's episode that really is going to help provide some context of how great it was. I mean, Sam could not have been a better guest, and it was interesting to see, as busy as someone as Sam is, that he has these little moments of joy in something as simple as a glass of whiskey, which is, I have a lot of respect for it. This whole show is built around the spirit. So definitely, this is an ode to Sam, and I don't think he'll see this, but I really appreciate him coming on. I appreciate sitting down with him. I look forward to the chance of doing that on a much longer scale next time. We were kind of short for time. But this week, I sit down with Todd Grube, local cohort. He's been on now quite a few episodes of the show. We explain a little bit about that. And so let's get to it. So this week's show is, as always, sponsored by Terlato Distell Artisan Spirits, leader in premium artisan products like Bunnahabhain, Deanston, Ledaig, Tobermory, Bains, Black Bottle, and of course, Scottish Leader. You can pick up the entire line at your local liquor store, or if you are a retailer, reach out to your United Wine and Spirits rep. I will say this. We actually haven't had a bottle on in the last couple of episodes, but I really, truly cannot express my love for Deanston and Bunnahabhain in particular. Tobermory, Ledaig also, fantastic bottles. But Bunnahabhain is from Islay. Islay is a special place for me, a special place in my marriage. Huge fan. And Deanston just won Whiskey of the Year from one of the most remarkably respectful and respectable reviewers, Ralphie. Definitely check out Deanston. Whiskey Neat is supported also by the Inspired Spirits at Glass Rev Imports and Amrut Distilleries. Amrut crafts one of the most award-winning Indian single malts to the exacting standards of Scotch. Amrut Fusion also received the double gold blind and scored a jaw-dropping 96 points by judges at the Proof Awards. Amrut Single Malt Whisky is widely available across America and can be found almost everywhere in Texas. Go out and get a bottle today, and I mean that. I make a big announcement about what we're doing with Amrut this year. The show is a huge fan of how fantastic Amrut is, and I have something so great in store for the Texas market in regards to this brand. And they're not even paying me to do it. I'm just a fan of them. Of course, they help support the show. Again, couldn't be a bigger fan, but we don't allow any sponsors on the show that I'm not a fan of. And let me throw some shade for a minute. So some of my favorite podcasts, I noticed a trend of them doing sponsor reads for something. I won't say the brand. Let's not hurt a brand's name, but a good product's a good product. But 60 proof peanut butter whiskey, and this one in particular, I haven't
had it yet.
I've had it, and it's a syrupy bomb of sadness.
Surprise.
The syrupy bomb of sadness. I have something. We don't allow my whole point was that we don't have sponsors on the show that we don't support and believe in. I am a huge fan of Balcones. I'm a huge fan of Glenfiddich. I love Bruichladdich, and it is pronounced Bruichladdich for those wondering. And then Amrut. So something in store. I'll announce on the show about Amrut. Lastly, our last sponsor of the show is Bruichladdich, progressive Aberdeen distillers since 1881. Our whiskey is 100% conceived, distilled, matured, and bottled only on Islay, using 100% Scottish barley. Bottled naturally, unchill filtered, and coloring-free, Bruichladdich offers a wide whiskey range, including an unpeated, crafted using local barley and hand-selected casks to create a floral, elegant, and crisp flavor. The Port Charlotte heavily peated range, and of course, one of my favorites, the Octomore, the most heavily peated of their whiskey range, is powerful. Try that again. The Octomore, the most heavily peated of their whiskey range, is a powerful demonstration of the art that goes into distilling with unparalleled levels of peat and smoke. And God, I love the Band-Aid. I love the campfire. Everything about that I'm a huge fan of. So these are our sponsors. I can't thank them enough. I can't thank Sam Hueghan enough. I can't thank Todd enough. Todd has been on call for this show for about a year now, and I just getting a chance to sit down with a friend over drinks is my absolute favorite part of life. So, and my kids and wife are okay too, I guess. But without further ado, HoustonWhiskeySocial.com. Tickets are on sale. We got 3 weeks left. And now, without further ado, cheers. Todd, what's up, man?
What's up?
I think this now officially makes you 9% of my episodes.
9%.
We talked about it.
Yep.
So I know what you're thinking, guys. It's the 100th episode. That's a special landmark. And to that, I say, no, it's not. I mean, if you do the math, if it's one episode a week, that's like 1 year, 10 months, and three weeks or something like that. Like it's not even a full two. If it's going to be special episode 104, 2 years, I think is a more significant achievement than just episode 100. So now that is me trying to make an excuse because I actually had been talking. I won't say who, but I had been talking to a specific local sports team. I contacted a certain player's people, and we had gone back and forth for a minute. And then Monday in Houston, there was some news that basically shut down any exchange, no response to my follow-up emails, no like literally just put the kibosh on it. So that would have been a great 100th episode to get a pretty decent local sports figure, whatever sport that might be, and it didn't happen. So I have hopes that will eventually happen, and maybe we can lock something in by 104. I will say we did, there's quite a few people coming to town over the next month that I hope the next 4 episodes are fruitful. But let's drink. So we had a fantastic week last week. I'm going to start with... Why don't we start here because I want to address some things that happened in last week's episode. So we had a fantastic interview with Sam Hueghan. And Sam Hueghan, I mean a fantastic... God, you did such a great job editing. The Infinite Black thing was... I was talking to my wife, and you guys can't see Jack off camera, but I was talking to my wife about... We bickered a little bit during setup, like trying to brainstorm about how the vision we wanted to be. And the end result yielded the best result. So, and I said that I think that speaks to Jack and our relationship, that sometimes you're a little persistent on the aesthetic, and I need to remind you that I'm paying for the show, like I'm the boss. But the end result could not have been better. And I wanted to say thank you on camera that Jack did a fantastic job.
It was a great episode.
We had a massive response, and I'm sure we will see some continued viewers from last week's episode. Thank you for all that watched that episode. The reason why I'm pouring this bottle of Amrut Fusion is I got a lot of crazy feedback about the episode asking what is the bottles we drank. Can I get a list? Which specific Balcones was it? Which specific Glenfiddich. They were all quite expensive, though totally worth it. I mean, a 23-year-old single malt Scotch is you can't go wrong. But I wanted to provide some more easily available options from the stuff that we tried with Sam, my friend Sam. We're best friends now, and So starting off, we had I don't think I'm going out of order here. I think the first one we had may have been the Grand Cru.
Yeah, I think
so. Glenfiddich. This is a 14-year-old Glenfiddich Bourbon Barrel Reserve. They are. This is the most accessible crossover that I tell people who are bourbon drinkers into Scotch. So Glenfiddich 14, $45. You can find this everywhere, and it's. I mean, you just literally. I couldn't be happier with it. So a little bump in proof on that too. So 86 proof. Then we had, I believe, the Amrut Indian whiskey. So that sherried edition that we had, the intermediate sherry, is a bit hard to get. It was a one-time release, which, by the way, I have some great news about that. Through this show and through the Houston Bourbon Society, we are exclusively getting a very special edition Amrut for the state of Texas, like a barrel pick.
Nice.
It was.
I think we've had the sherried one.
Yep.
Before.
The intermediate sherry is
really good.
absolutely stunning. But this is the Amrut Fusion. Mm-hmm. During our ad reads, we've talked about specifically the Amrut Fusion. This is some of the best peated single malt that's coming out of India ever. Couldn't be happier with the Amrut Fusion. So that's what we're drinking first. It's definitely a little smoky. And it's reminiscent of...
So why is it fusion? What's the story?
Oh, that's a good question. So they use Indian barley and Scottish barley. So it's a mix between East and West.
Oh, that's cool.
My first thought when you asked the question was there was this fantastic one that they did a few years ago that used... they literally would replace staves in a barrel with like three staves of a sherry barrel, 3 staves of a special, bourbon barrel. And that way what you had was... bleeding or leaking, leaching into the wood of different types of barrels all at once. And
I'm surprised that you don't hear about that more, with the Maker's Mark, with the way they do the barrel staves. I've thought about that. Is it more expensive, I guess, to pull in?
It's ridiculously expensive, yeah. It's expensive to...
Because it's a custom barrel, essentially.
Yeah, and also when you break down a barrel and put it back together, you've got to trim and shape, and it doesn't always work either. So... Amrut Fusion, this bottle I think you can run in Texas somewhere, and you can find it almost anywhere. It's one of the most common core expressions. I want to say $60, $65. It may be a little higher, but I'm a huge fan of the Amrut Fusion. Then we tried the Octomore. Now Octomore runs like $150 a bottle. Mm-hmm. This is the Port Charlotte 10, heavily peated Islay single malt. If you like peated whiskey and you can't find the Octomore, which is also pretty limited, then the Port Charlotte 10-year-old is pretty regularly available, and it's fantastic. And same thing, $65,
and I have to say,
$70.
Sam's description of talking about peated Scotch, where it's raining outside and you're sitting inside your cottage, and, the fire's going.
Well, it's so weird. He actually has a long storied history. I think he grew up in like near a castle, and at one point in time he went to school and lived like out of this old fashioned, he grew up in like a video game. Like it was like this old school representation of what we think Harry Potter might have gone up, and he couldn't have been nicer. And we even chatted a little bit via email after the show, and we talked to his people at Sassenach Spirits. There is more to come, and I'm really, really excited about that. But he couldn't have been a nicer guy, man. It was just so weird. And once I could get my wife to lift her jaw and close her mouth, he was just...
Well, I think he was perfect. Genuine. It was fun to watch you guys talk, because this is a guy that clearly likes whiskey.
And that's what we heard a lot of. We heard a lot of people just kind of blown away by it. So even, like I said, I mentioned this off air, but there was a woman in the Hooligans group, Hooligans, that she drove 40 miles to get a bottle of Balcones. And when that was sent to me, I couldn't believe it. So he loved it. She actually grabbed the 53% single malt, but I wanted to mention that as well. So there's cast strength Balcones, and there's slightly watered down 53% Balcones, which is the one she picked up. It's the same single malt. It's just slightly cut with water. You can find Balcones pretty much anywhere. So this is still regularly available. This one in particular, though, is a special single barrel, and I'll tell you that for those who are watching and aren't familiar with that, the idea of these clubs and groups like the Houston Bourbon Society or all these other groups. There's literally groups everywhere in every state that do these single barrel selections, which, you know, I'm not saying it's going to happen, but we're making a trip to Scotland this year to pick out some barrels of Scotch, and I'm trying to convince if Sam Hueghan's in town to come on by and taste a few barrels. But that's the that's the goal, right? If you can pick out a single individual barrel that just is absolutely exceptional, because every barrel is different, and that's what this is. We did a Balcones pick. We were the Houston Bourbon Society. We did a pick that just dropped. This is called Smoky Mary.
Yep. And
we had another one called Doctor's Orders. And Todd here, Toddrick, which, by the way,
yeah, Todd for short.
Yeah, is your license plate your initials?
It is. I wanted the black plates, and I had to customize it. That's my excuse.
Okay.
That's why I have the vanity
TRG.
plates.
What's
the only way I could get the black plates?
What's the R stand? Don't tell me. Hold on. Is it Roderick or Rodham? Like Hillary Rodham? Toddrick Rodham?
Yep, Rodham.
Groom?
It's not.
What's the R? Robert?
Raymond.
Toddrick.
It's my dad and my
Raymond.
grandfather's name.
I saw your car out front, and I was like, this son of a... Gosh darn it. So
I wanted those black plates to match the black
super
car.
Nice BMW, by the way. I drove up in my beater truck. Anyway, so you've got this accessible line of all fantastic bottles. You really just a great job. I mean, Balcones is one of the oldest in the state. They do a lot of different stuff. So if one thing's not your jam, it's like, I always hear people like, I don't like sushi. I'm like, well, have you tried this? Have you tried that?
It was good to hear Sam's reaction to that. You know, he was talking about American single malts and how they're starting to come into their own, and it's different than the Scotch that we're used to.
You know, I think he had. There was one thing that the audience may not have noticed, but he kind of spoke to the idea of terroir. There's this idea in wine that where your grapes grow in wine and what region they pick up similar characteristics to where you can tell, you can pick up on it and say, okay, this came from California or this came from Italy. In whiskey, there's a bit of a battle right now over whether or not terroir exists. By distilling the spirit, you pretty much remove a lot of the weaker volatile compounds. You get a pure product. There's an old saying, distillation is purification. And in Scotland, there is a long-standing belief that there's different regions of Scotland for whiskey, and that each region is more specific. On Islay, it's all peated whiskey. In the Highlands, you get a lot of sherried whiskey. Lowlands, a lot of boring whiskey. This is a farce, and the new found belief system is coming around that the idea of terroir is BS. And Sam mentioned that, and that was one of those, when you're having a conversation with someone over whether or not you think that they're into the hobby, you know what it's like. Someone says, oh, I love Blanton's or I love Pappy. Sure. You're like, okay, well, then that tells me you're pretty early on in your journey, because those are the first names that you hear.
Stage one.
To say something like, to mention that terroir is
what was his comment, that he could tell that it was American single malt?
No, this was, I think, a little earlier in the interview. We were talking about the idea of regions, and he had mentioned that he doesn't. It was kind of a throwaway comment that I picked up on that I don't think other people would have noticed if you're not familiar with it. But he had just mentioned the idea of regions, and that he doesn't quite buy it.
So what's the argument there? Is it that? Because for me, it's the difference regionally and in different countries is going to be mash bills, yeasts.
Sure.
Is it peated or not?
Well, a great, very simplistic idea that a lot of people don't grasp. I let me say this. Officially, I am in the middle. I don't necessarily believe one or the other, but my initial instinct with anything is that if you're going to make an assertion, until you prove that assertion, then I'm going to say that I don't buy it until proven otherwise. There are some commonalities within region.
Yeah.
There's no doubt that Islay is known for peated whiskey.
But they also share common methods of production. Like here, we can often taste Tennessee whiskey.
Sure.
Or Indiana. We know that it came from a certain distiller.
The two most common Tennessee whiskeys are Dickel and Jack Daniels, and they couldn't taste further apart.
Right.
There is zero similarity. Right. In distillation, oftentimes you're buying your barley from overseas or out of country. Bruichladdich does a great job of actually doing a lot of local Islay barley, or even Port Charlotte, just very extremely local farmed ingredients. But a lot of brands, they buy their grain elsewhere, right? And all you're doing in your distillery is you're fermenting them and boiling them and cooking them, right? If my mom makes a goulash or a dish, I don't know why I said my mom, let's talk about my beautiful wife. If my wife makes a dish using ingredients from elsewhere, if she makes it here or she makes it 100 miles from here, my wife's dish tastes the same. She has mastered whatever that dish is. So the idea that terroir exists in wine is different because you have active yeast and a lot of, you're pulling your grapes from your own backyard, right? These wineries will pull their grapes, they grow them on site. Most distilleries aren't growing their own corn consistently in the same spot. They're buying it from elsewhere. So
okay, that makes sense.
And even on Islay, I mean, an argument I think might could be made for some maybe port in what's the name of, not Port Charlotte, but where Lagavulin is, Port Ellen. Port Ellen, Lagavulin or Lefroy gets 10% of their malted barley from Port Ellen. The company that handles the grain. It used to be a distillery, now it just handles barley production. 10% of it. The rest comes from off the island, as big as that distillery is. So I don't necessarily, I think some distilleries have distinct, Balcones taste like Balcones.
Yeah.
And Iron Root tastes like Iron Root. There are some distinctions with some distilleries. Jack Daniel's has a consistent banana note. But I don't necessarily buy that an entire region is going to be a
probably not.
way.
I mean, I think that there could be an argument made that if we were doing a blind tasting of Kentucky, Indiana, Tennessee, and Texas whiskey, that we could pick up on the Texas, but that's really more that it's young.
You couldn't pick up on the Indiana MGP and Kentucky have the exact same profile. Yeah, you're getting just fantastic, bourbon, great bourbon. Yeah, I think yes, you can pick up a difference with Texas whiskeys, but I think that has more to do with Occam's razor, that these are younger distilleries who are still trying to figure things out. The oldest distillery in Texas is 10 years old. The oldest distillery in Kentucky is 200 years old.
That's right. And I think the heat is a factor.
Sure.
I mean, you're getting more oak faster.
No, I buy that. I buy the extraction of the wood, development in wood's it's a different process here. There's no denying that. But the idea that terroir, I was more referring to Scotch being, different. You can have a beautiful, Auchentoshan has made some beautiful lowland stuff. Bunnahabhain is one of my all-time favorite, great sponsor of the show, Bunnahabhain. I'm out of those bottles. I need to bring some more on the show. But Bunnahabhain does not taste anything like Ardbeg, Lefroy. Bruichladdich does not taste anything like those two. So anyway, so there was something else I wanted to address.
I want to pop up in one of these balconies because I actually
haven't had it.
It's been a while. It's been you brought a sample a long time ago, but I haven't opened it. This is a fresh bottle. This is the Smoky Mary, still sort of unreleased.
Mary. Yeah, that's going to go to Total Wine in Texas. I'm very happy with that. Address the specific spirits drink. Address the 1917 bourbon. So I don't know if I mentioned this off air. We did mention. We talked about it off air. Yeah. So for the few eagle-eyed viewers who caught the idea that we didn't give Sam a pour of the 1917 bourbon, that was because, being an old bottle of bourbon, the cork tends to degrade, and it broke in the middle of me trying to open it. In fact, if you watch the episode, you can see me panicking a little bit when I pull the cork off and it breaks, and I start rummaging through my bag looking for the wine opener that I always carry in my bag that I didn't carry with me that day. So I couldn't get the bottle open, and Sam was on an extreme time crunch. So we had to finish the interview, and we wrapped it with a pour of American Single Malt, and he kind of set that up. He mentioned that he loves American Single Malt, and I was like, well, let's keep going. And I apologized to him off air. Jack did a great job of cutting out most of that and making it kind of flawless, but a few people still kind of noticed. I have very great intentions of seeing Sam again, and I will be bringing that bottle with a fresh cork in it when it happens.
So he did not get to taste it.
He did not get to taste it. Yeah. So we definitely missed an opportunity there, and he was so excited.
Which bottle was that?
Yeah, it was such a rookie mistake. It was the Old Log Cabin, 1917.
Okay. Wow. This is delicious.
Which I will be pouring that at the Houston Whiskey Social this year. So on February 8th, if you haven't checked it out yet, and if you are a fan of Sam Hueghan and you're in the Houston area, HoustonWhiskeySocial.com, we will be pouring the Old Log Cabin and a few other like extremely rare bottles just to kind of have some fun at the event.
Yeah,
so
it's always awesome old stuff.
So cheaper alternatives. Oh, news about barrel strength Old Forester.
Yeah.
Are you excited?
I am.
So I did reach out to our local crew and was like, for 2020, we want another Jack Daniel's barrel proof, another rye, and we got to have that Old Forester.
Yeah, absolutely.
So
because that's been my one criticism of the 90 proof stuff. It's fantastic, and some of those picks have been great. I just wish it had a little bit more punch.
A little bit more oomph behind it. Yeah, I mean, even, I love Elijah Craig's single barrels, but the 94 proof still isn't quite enough.
Yeah.
So we're...
And I love the sample label that they showed. It showed 130 proof on the Old Forester, I think, which
really that
makes
high?
Me wonder, if it can go that high.
I mean,
we may have some come in at I don't know if they go into the barrel at 125.
The bottles have to be at least, and this is my argument here, have to be at least $75 a bottle. I believe the picks are 50, probably more, right? Probably more. So and then 19.
Wait, with the current picks?
Yeah.
No, I think they're cheaper. I think the Old Forester current picks are about $40. I could be wrong. I still
think it's going to be 75 because Old Forester 1920 is 115 proof.
Right.
And that's
like 55 something 60. Like that, $60.
Yeah, $60. So I think if we're going to go cast strength, I think they've got to be 75.
People are going to pay for it.
Speaking of which, I wanted to tell you, it won't be on your trip next week. Todd's traveling to Kentucky with a crew to go pick out 2 barrels of Bulleit Bourbon,
which is new. I mean, the Bulleit just started doing picks recently.
I don't want to say it on air because I don't want people to flood this guy's inbox, but there is a certain company that we've done a lot with that has got their hands on some 18-year-old whiskey, not bourbon, but 18-year-old whiskey that I think it's Kentucky whiskey.
Okay.
So it's just used barrels.
Yeah.
And for the same price as their other offerings, and we're going to get in first.
Wow. 18 years.
18 years. I'll tell you the brand off air, but
okay. I think I can guess.
You can guess, yeah.
We visited. Know how many could take in barrels like that.
Yeah. So we visited them together. You, me, Mike, and yeah.
I'm on to you.
Yep, that company. So it's going to be great. I'm excited. But yeah, we do a bunch of barrel selections, and next week you guys are the first 2 Bulleit barrels for the state, I think.
Yeah.
Definitely for the club.
I don't know. Yeah. I know they just started. I just tried one from Louisiana, I think, about a month ago, so it's pretty new.
Yeah, that was Hocus Pocus, right? So I actually have not had an E.H. Taylor barrel proof in years.
It's kind of having its moment right now. The 19 is fantastic.
Mind if I...
Go ahead. I think this is the 2017. I really think that the whole line is, I don't want to say underrated because everyone knows that it's good, but even the single barrels is great. Obviously, it's going to depend on the barrel, but when I get that at bars, I've been pleasantly surprised many times. The single barrel.
I've never ordered an E.H. Taylor at a bar. It's so funny. I've always loved E.H. Taylor on the table. It's not that I hate it. I just am unimpressed with the price.
So I don't normally dial into it, but it's like if you're at a bar that doesn't have a great selection, and this was the best choice.
Yeah.
I've been shocked at how much I liked it for the single. The barrel proofs are always good.
It's not bad. It's got a candiness to it that I really like. Wow. That's actually... I was definitely shitting on it at first. Pardon my language, by the way. I know we have a lot of new listeners. We have very honest conversations on this show.
Yeah, I really like it.
Yeah, that's there's a candiness there that I'm actually a huge fan of. I have had E.H. Taylor before. Our great friend Steve Platts, the National Director of the Human Research Program at NASA, brought a bottle of the Tornado on, and that was fantastic.
Oh, wow. Yeah. That's one I haven't had. Those just go for an incredible amount of money.
I think 600, something like that. And he opened on the show like it was nothing. I think he opened it out of spite too. He's like, He hates secondary.
Yeah, they're more than that now. What did you say? 6?
Oh, really?
You said 6? Oh, it's definitely.
Well, this probably was a year and a half ago too. He was like
I'm guessing, but at least 800 or 900.
Oh,
could be a lot more actually.
I also meant to mention that we are now planning on shorter episodes, 30 to 45 minutes from now on, so a little bit faster.
Yeah.
So drink quicker.
Okay. No, I was just I was talking to Jack before the episode that I thought that the episode with Sam was good. It was quick. It was under 40 minutes, and it had me wanting more.
More, yeah.
And that's kind of not a bad thing, rather than dragging on.
Well, listen, no one wants to drag on, but there is something to be said of a. I could have sat there with him for another hour.
Yeah.
And I wasn't. Yeah, it's weird.
He sounded like he wanted to.
Yeah, well, it's weird. So I wasn't starstruck. I also didn't realize how big of a deal Sam was until you start doing even remotely a little bit amount of. I mean, I followed the show. I've in fact, and I don't know if we talked about this in the show, but my wife and I have a couple of baby toddlers, and well, she was, I don't know, watching something. Me and my sister-in-law started watching Outlander around the same time, and we would like call each other in the mornings on the way to work and leave voice notes of what was happening in the show at the time. Like, where are you at in the series? And totally, I swear I'm straight and I love my wife, but Did
she add him to the celebrity exception list before the episode?
We don't have one of those, but it did come up before the episode.
Did you add it?
Yeah, no. So I've been a fan of the show, and yeah, I'm a fan of the show. But I didn't realize that he has this insane following, and more importantly, there's something that's talked about in this industry called a conversion rate. You can have 1 million followers, but if you're getting a couple hundred likes per photo, it's not that great. But he has got 500,000 followers on Twitter, and the activity is off the charts.
Yeah, so
devout fans.
I went to YouTube to watch it, and I saw all the comments, and you had kind of told me that this, hey, it's going to be, his fans are going to be all over the episode, and yeah, I mean, there were just like 1 million comments.
Yeah, and
all from women.
I hate Twitter, and my Twitter hasn't stopped. And in fact, my personal Twitter has fewer followers than the show's Twitter, and I didn't see the value in Twitter until I started following Sam. It's more of like a headline news.
Sure.
What's happening now, whereas Instagram is a bit more peaceful and visually aesthetic is a lot better. The whole thing's been a learning curve for sure. So, but my wife, when she finally did get around to watching the show, she obsessed. And I have a theory. I don't know if I've talked about this anywhere else, but and please, for those who are watching who just became fans because of the Sam Hueghan thing, hear me out before you pass judgment, because this is not an insult. There were these romance novels in the 80s and 90s, and they were paperback, and there was a shirtless, muscular man
Fabio
I'm getting there. So this long flowing hair of a attractive hero saving a damsel in distress. In the physical real life incarnation was Fabio. That's where Fabio got his fame. And Fabio's a bit of a joke now, but he was famous for being this beautiful, handsome hero man.
I guess you've written off Fabio as coming off on this one of these episodes after that comment. Right?
Yeah,
he's probably not going to come on now.
Yeah, probably not. So, but Fabio was well respected, and he actually, at one point in time, I think they actually started putting him on some of these books. He was the physical incarnation of the hero, the man's man, or the female's man. There's just a gorgeous example of the male figure. We haven't had that in 30 years. I mean, it's been since the 90s. He became the I can't believe it's not butter guy, bit of a running joke at times, depending on who you talk to. Sam Hueghan is our generation's, or the latest incarnation of an ideal man, right? He's attractive, he's athletic, his relationship with Katrina Balfe on Outlander, his love for her.
He drinks whiskey.
His voice, man, you want to talk, I'm very comfortable in my skin. I think I'm a pretty decent looking guy. Then I watch an episode of me talking to Sam, and I cannot stop feeling insecure.
It is the first thing I noticed. Not your lack of voice, but his voice. I was like, okay, I can see.
He had this.
I knew nothing of him before I watched that episode.
He speaks in cursive, It's just all the words flow together in this beautiful chocolatey.
The accent, and he's got the tone also.
I mean, just like asking the questions, that Bushmills questions, where he's like, "Oh, steel in production today." Like just this. That's my best.
Like
Scottish
I said,
accent.
when he was describing drinking Scotch, like I said, and he was going through the story, it was like listening to a narrator read a book about drinking Scotch in Scotland.
Fantastic voice, and there's a ton of comments in regards to his voice, and then one woman comments on me. And she's like, ugh, eyebrows to hairline, that's a $50 Uber. And I was like, what? God. I was like, okay, well, delete this, and I'm going to start combing my hair forward. Like, it was like I have never felt more unattractive than this moment. And that, by the way, that comment.
That's the tough part about reading comments online.
Oh, well, listen, I'm familiar with.
You're always going to get something like that.
I'm familiar with putting myself out there and dealing with the consequences, but. I lost my train of thought. My wife and my sister-in-law, I wouldn't say become obsessed, but they were very happy to meet him. I mean, they weren't obsessed. They weren't going to, there was some controversy.
Well, he also seems very approachable. I think that's why people like him. I mean, in the interview, came off as like a regular guy.
Yeah. I will say that so the image of him in the show is that he is this perfect man in a perfect relationship with a woman, Katrina Balfe, who's just as in love and dedicated to him as he is to her. Mm-hmm. So the role of a show, but sometimes the character and the real life actor are two different people. No, he's the exact same. Yeah. He comes across as genuine and nice.
But if you play a positive character, people fall in love with that. Regardless
for sure.
Of, and they think that they know you more than they do, or like the person, like you said, especially if you're just a good person.
Well, and I mentioned this too. There's, who's the guy that played Wolverine? Hugh Jackman. Yeah. Hugh Jackman, Ryan Reynolds. These are, they've been voted sexiest man alive. They don't have Facebook groups of 80,000 women or 80,000 people following them.
I think you're right. That's because of the romantic side. That you're seeing that this is a good man who loves his. I don't know what the relationship is. I haven't gotten that far in the show.
Sure, but
loves his woman. And,
so, but it's not just the show. So, and that's what I wanted to highlight. It's not. I'm not just trying to group an entire mindset around a character. In real life, and I'll give you. I don't want people to bombard him, but how this whole interview happened could not have been more human and more genuine and more nice. And what your image of him is really him. He could not have been a nicer guy. We had a great time talking to him. I wish, going back to you saying shorter episodes, there is something to be said, though, when a conversation just flows. We did the episode with Dolph Lundgren. That was an hour and a half. We wanted to keep going. We loved it so much, just being able to sit and talk to him. I could have done an hour and a half with Sam, and it would have been great. Mm-hmm. Plus, it would have been more fun if we both got a little tipsy after that day, and we had a long day, man. I mean, we drove 10 hours round trip. I mean, left early for 32 minutes with someone that I liked, and I mean, it was great.
Where
Everything about it was great.
New Orleans?
New Orleans, yeah.
Okay. This Jack is awesome.
The Jack. So yeah, there's actually. For those wondering about the Jack Daniel's Rye Barrel, there are a few cases left at Spec Smith Street in Houston. This was talked about. I don't know if I mentioned this on the show. I might have with you, but we picked through fresh samples for this. This was not the leftovers of other people's rejects. But there are some cases left at Spec Smith Street downtown. Our Balcones cask will go to Total Wine, and we've got some other stuff coming out that I'm excited about.
Yeah. So I mentioned this to you before, but for the 100th episode, that's why I brought these Bottle and Bond 100 and proof.
Oh, nice.
Yeah, so now you have to drink the Old Fitzgerald too.
Yeah, I'll drink the Old Fitz as well. The 100th episode is great, and I will say that I do appreciate we've had a really great following for the last 2 years. Things have been fantastic. Nothing is more humbling than doing a Sam Hueghan interview and realizing you're nothing in terms of viewership. But we actually have some pretty great names coming in 2020 that I'm very excited about. We talked about a little bit.
Yeah.
By the way, keep that between us until it's locked in. But
all right.
Yeah, a couple of All right.
See, I was being subtle, and then you just blew it.
Yeah, what are you talking about? I have no idea what you're talking about. I'm just drinking here. Oh, man. Oh, I just opened this.
No,
it's open. Yeah.
So a nice side effect of all those people watching the episode last time, that it's great to hear that they're going and drinking whiskey, that they see what Sam likes and what you were drinking, and then they run out to the store and buy it.
I mean, our sponsors are happy for sure. I will say that I think that
it works.
The whole idea of this show was to always just be able to sit down with friends and have an honest conversation. The tagline of the show is spirited conversations with interesting people. Sam's an interesting person. Mm-hmm. Melissa Villasenor, interesting person. We've had a lot of decent, Dolph Lundgren, interesting person. I want to do more of that, but it is nice to bring people into the hobby. The whole idea of the Houston Bourbon Society is to bring new people in, to teach them. I mean, you put a lot of effort into our new user guide, and this is a super, super fun, interesting, we call them taste treats.
Yeah.
My sister-in-law, every time you go to like a tapas-style restaurant where you have little bites of things, that's what this is. Little bites of this. I want to taste this. There's no, you get some sugar and you get some maple syrup and some stuff, and there's no maple syrup in it. It's just a pure distilled product. It's always great to see what you can do with a spirit.
And that's the whole idea of drinking, we hope, is that you're doing it with other people. Brings people together, talk about it.
Oh, yeah.
Makes you happy.
Speaking of which, Richard Seal will be here for the Whiskey Social.
I'm super excited about that.
Yeah. One of these days, I thought about slipping Sam a glass of rum to see what his experience in rum would be. But Richard Seal will be here for the Whiskey Social. There's also another surprise guest that I can't talk about, but there will be someone else there of note.
Okay. In the rum world, or you're speaking generally?
I can't say, because that would give it away.
All right.
So the February 8th, we're 3 weeks out, and you can get tickets at HoustonWhiskeySocial.com. I haven't had.
What's that? You got the old?
Yeah.
Old
so
fits?
so I haven't had many of the old fits. One, because I haven't. How do I say this? I haven't cared.
Yeah.
I like the decanter it's in.
It's beautiful,
and it's a special bottle for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I know it's going to be good. But every time I get something like this, I save it for the social.
Mm-hmm.
And this is fantastic.
Yeah.
At 100 proof, this Old Fitz is absolutely brilliant.
It's pretty unique. It reminded me of an older whiskey. I don't know what it is about it, but it doesn't. It's got something to it. And I haven't had it for a while. I'll have to pour one for myself and see if I can figure out what that is. But it reminded me of, I don't want to say like a dusty, but it has something different going on.
Oh, they're definitely, I know what you're talking about. The specific old note you get from some old bottles of bourbon.
Yeah.
The Old Fitzgerald definitely carries that. I liken it to a limestone note, like a mineral note. That's where I tie that into.
They just came out with a 15-year.
Yeah, it's the oldest they've released. I think $150 or something, which is not bad.
In Kentucky, $150. That's it. It's not bad.
Yeah, I think the last one's 130.
This is the 13, and 120, 130. I'll pour some of this.
We got a little bit of everything here. So I'm going to open up this Glenfiddich Bourbon Barrel Reserve. Yes, they're sponsors of the show, but I know the rep, Danielle, and...
Well, I enjoyed going through all the Glenfiddich line in that at the Grand Cru event. That was fun.
Oh, man, that was insane. Have we talked about on the show? The Grand Cru event?
It was sick. That's like the baller party.
I gotta say it though. I have no choice. I have to say these words. Holy shit! And bleep it for the podcast too. I feel like I've got a bunch of new listeners that I want to scare them off with my language.
That place was. What was the name of the venue? Yeah, I don't remember, but it was beautiful.
Bell Tower.
Yeah.
Bell Tower on 34th.
Yeah.
So they spent a tremendous amount of money launching the Grand Cru event, which I know you don't partake, but I think you'd have a lot of fun coming to some of these events. They had an unlimited oyster bar.
Yeah. Well, like you said, what is that, a $400 bottle?
Well, for the event, I want to say it's like $350 for the Grand Cru.
Yeah. So
23 years
the
old.
thing for me so it started out in a smaller room, which was a nice room. I thought that was the party, and then they're like, no, this is
a lot more.
the entryway.
Yeah.
And then it was like walking into Wonderland, because you had the ice sculptures, the lights,
outside. The DJ.
But the thing that caught me was the Glencairns. There were trays of Glencairns with like 20 of them filled with Grand Cru. And there were waitresses walking around with those.
It was MTV Cribs in that mother, man. You had unlimited amounts of high-end booze.
And we killed all those bottles, however many they had.
So I think they purchased something like a lot. 27 bottles.
Yeah.
At a pretty decent price. And it was just a brand showing thank you to a market, which is happening a lot lately, where Houston is getting a lot of, I think, well-deserved love and attention. And that's not, let me be clear, that's not me, that's not the show, but just the market. Houston is finally being shown as a real, passionate whiskey scene. I mean, on this table right now, you've got Indian whiskey, Scottish whiskey, Texas whiskey, Kentucky, and the price range of, there's $1,000 on this table, right? I mean, what's this?
That's Four Roses Limited.
Yeah, no. I mean, price-wise, $150. Yeah,
you're talking retail.
$150, $100, $150, something. I mean, there's a decent amount of booze on this table for two people to sit and drink.
And to your point, it's super diverse. Like, look at all the different stuff that we have here. Different countries,
which I really want.
Regions.
I really want to express that for those who are learning the whiskey category is diversify and sip slowly. Try something literally. Why not? Let's do it. So for those wanting to know the best process, in my opinion, and for those who are listening, I apologize, but literally take just a little bit into the front of your mouth and leave it there. Your mouth's going to start watering, and it's going to start mixing with the whiskey, and kind of, once the burn starts to slow down a little bit, it's setting the stage for you to be drinking the rest of the evening. Then swallow. Don't swallow too fast. Our American history in drinking is shots. The worst thing you can do is a shot. Don't do shots. There is so much time and attention put into making a spirit. This took 14 years to put into the bottle.
Right.
14 years.
It's like with wine. You don't bottle chug a nice wine.
You don't bottle chug.
You're wasting the quality.
Even boxed wine. There's some pretty decent boxed wines out there that I would spend time with. I'm not chugging it.
Yeah, and it's a good point you're making, though, because I think a lot of people, when they're first getting started, that's the mistake they make, is they're pounding through glasses. And I have friends that I've kind of tried to bring along, and I watch them just shoot it, and it's like,
what are you doing?
No, slow down.
Yeah, I mean, literally, we're talking about a glass. You want just a touch, just a nip in the glass, and you want to spend time with it, taste it, experience it. I know that there were some comments thinking that me and Sam were knocking back a bunch, but we weren't. We're talking half ounce, not even half ounce pours in a single sitting. Yeah. We tasted, we experienced, and this is some of the best, and so much time and attention is put forward to it. Our history with drinking in America entails us doing shots, and shots burn. You like choke on it, you swallow weird, you need a chaser of lime or tequila or whatever some salt, right? Mm-hmm. You don't need any of that if you respect the spirit. If you literally just spend time slowly sipping, maybe do that. I know some people hate it when I make that noise on the microphone.
But wait, I was telling you about my video idea for teaching, for drinking and going around the table. A bunch of guys, each of them have their own noise that they make.
Sure.
And you kind of go around, and then you have the one new person who's looking at everyone like, oh God, when it's my turn, what do I do?
He wants to make sure he does it right and doesn't look dumb. Yeah,
but, everyone has their own technique. I mean, there's a reason for all of it. I mean, it's you're trying to sort of aerate in your mouth, and I feel like when I take a sip, close my mouth and breathe it in my nose, I feel like I get, the smell is a big part of the taste, sure. And I feel like it brings it all together.
I mean, smooth is often associated with a lower proof as well. Whiskey, historically, a lot of it's been cut down to 80 proof. I threw a lot of very high proof stuff at Sam. The Octomore is like 60-something%. The Amrut Sherry Intermediate was 59%. The cast strength Balcones is 64%. That thing where he goes, "That's my jam."
Yeah.
That I warmed him up, and those things aren't historically considered smooth. And the reason why I stick on that is I don't want people to think that because it's a higher proof and it's no longer perceived as smooth that there's something wrong with it. That's not it at all. Yeah. You can have a higher proof spirit that isn't considered smooth because it's not water down as much.
Right.
And I don't want people to think that that's a bad thing. That's a great thing.
Right. Well, and as we always say, we prefer the barrel strength because you can dilute it if you need to.
Yep.
You can add ice.
Listen,
you can add water.
If I'm going to be buying lemonade at the store, I'm not buying pre-made lemonade. I'm buying the powder, and I'm adding whatever amount of water I want to it to make it as sweet or as non-sweet as I want. So I would much rather, as a consumer, cut it down to my goal versus, and that's what Sam mentioned in the episode. I hate to, this will be the only episode we obsess about Sam, so I apologize. But he mentioned bumping the proof. I don't think he mentioned this on air, but when Sam originally applied for his cola approval, his people applied for a 43% spirit. And
I think he did mention that.
43%. Yeah. And he was like, no. We're not watering it down that much. To water it down that much is definitely going to be more profitable to Sam. But Sam's like, no.
Because it
tastes better at 46. Yeah. You want it to taste. That doesn't mean that everything cut down is not as good. But when you spend time aiming the proof based off what makes the spirit taste the best, that's what is like a great example of a passion behind a project. And I wanted to address something else. We've seen a massive rise in views of our episode around celebrity-based spirits. I guess during the Sam interview, people thought he's got a celebrity-based spirit. We're going to go find the episode we did that Chris did about celebrity-based spirits. Historically, celebrity-endorsed spirits, I'm going to speak bluntly, are not great. They're cut down to the 80 proof. They're as watered down gets, and they're just a money grab. Most of these brands are like that. When someone agrees to do my show, when he doesn't have to, Sam's 10,000 bottles, that's a very small amount. He's going to be able to sell that out, no problem. But the fact that he insisted and persisted that it needs to be a higher proof because it tastes better, the mouthfeel, the unctuousness, that is a very positive, promising sign of what it's going to taste like. We've talked about this on the show. There are 3 signs of a superior product before you ever open the bottle. That is a bump and proof, non-chill filtration, not filtering out the haziness, and at 46%, he should be almost safe.
It's a good spot.
Yeah. And then the no added color. If you see that on a label, no added color, non-chill filtered, and a bump and proof, that is a extra special sign of that they are putting a lot of effort behind the product. So our conversation with him really, I think, exemplified his passion for the spirit. I'm really excited to see how it turns out. And
so it's not going to be out in time for the social. Is that what I heard?
It'll be released, but it's pretty much all pre-spoken for this first go around.
Okay.
I think they're sending me 1 or 2 bottles. I'm not sure, but the amount of excitement I have for it, not as a fan, but just the fact that he cares, means that I really am looking forward to how this tastes. So,
and I also saw, after I watched the episode, I went and watched Outlander, and so I figured out where the name came from, because that's
the very first episode
Outlander,
is called Sassenach, and it was his pet name for her over time. He kept calling her Sassenach, and listen, any celebrity who's as busy as Sam is, that finds something he's passionate on, like the history. He was going to do a podcast with his co-star Graham McTavish called Clanlands, about the Scottish clans going back, history-wise. And before it even came out, it got picked up for a TV show. He immediately he exudes fascination in the hobby. So I don't think it'll be out for the social enough to pour it at the event.
Right.
If I do get sent a bottle before then, that'd be great. But we'll definitely bring it on the show. We'll talk about it. I'll give it an objective opinion. They're not sponsors. They're definitely not paying me to talk about it. If it's good, I'm gonna say. I mean, the Heaven's Door episode's the other one that I like. When they were creating Heaven's Door and they approached Bob Dylan, they didn't want to just white label something. They wanted something that they enjoyed.
Right.
And if you ever go out and buy a bottle of Heaven's Door Tennessee whiskey, they didn't go through the Dickel process. So they don't call it Tennessee whiskey.
Yeah, I noticed that.
They call it Tennessee bourbon.
Yeah. They just have a great style too. I mean, that they're passionate about music, and I mean, it reminded me of Copper and Kings with their intertwining music.
Shout out to Joe Herron. Yeah. And you're going to see them too next week.
Yeah.
So Joe Herron, Copper and Kings. And let me make it clear. I know we're running out of time. This is the last segment. Yep. Scotch whiskey, whiskey period is fantastic, but there are so many great spirits out there that spend time in a barrel that deserve your love and attention. Armagnac, cognac, that's coming out soon.
Yeah, all the brandies.
And brandy, right? So brandy in general. Joe Heron out of Louisville, Copper and Kings, they have spent a lot of time and money and showing appreciation to a spirit that doesn't historically, like, people think of Kentucky as Bourbon City, and he's like, nah, I'm gonna make some grape whiskey,
but historically American. You know, I mean, the
brandy's
all the
very
way back
American,
to the beginning.
very American. So, anyways, we're out of time. We rambled enough today. Our relaxed, laid back 100th episode. This will be the last of the slow episodes. We've got a couple of great guests coming up. Although you're a fantastic guest, and I appreciate you coming on. Love you, Todd. Thanks so much. And one more pour as we head out. I'm going to take a pour of the Smoky Mary here. Yeah. If you're a Balcones fan,
I've already had some of
look
that.
for the single malt in your market. Look for the cask strength in your market. Definitely check out Amrut Fusion and the Port Charlotte, and of course the Glenfiddich 14. So I actually meant to pour this one, and I opened it and didn't even pour it. We have a lot of great, exciting episodes coming up. I hope you stick around. And I just wanted, again, to say thank you to Sam and his people. Sam went well out of his way after an exhausting day to make that interview happen. And Jack, thank you as well.
Hey, congrats on 100.
100.
Both of you.
100.
That's awesome.
Almost 2 years. We're 4 weeks away from 2 years. Actually, the first episode was March 22nd. How does that happen? Oh, we did an extra couple of bonus episodes. So it's not even 2 years. It'll be 2 years like episode 106. Whatever it is, I'll figure it out. March 22nd is our 2 anniversary, so just FYI.
Yeah.
Cheers.
Cheers.
Balcones' first ever year-round bourbon was an inspiration. It all had to work together. A blend of carefully selected ingredients, Texas-sized pot stills, and creative people determined to find the absolute best way to usher a new whiskey along. When you discover how it pairs with a meaningful moment, suddenly the feeling of drinking great whiskey becomes a whole lot more.